Morning, YouTube. Warbles on a lot here with First Dog on the
How do
Moon.
we deal with this post-Trump world? Well, first dog on the moon, he has a simple guide. Hello, patriots. Welcome to First Dog on the Moon's Guide to Modern Living. I'm Walkley Award-winning political cartoonist for The Guardian Australia, First Dog on the Moon. Don't we live in interesting times? Remember when Barack Obama was elected to the US presidency for the first time? It was historic. And sure, since then, American politics, particularly foreign policy, has been like a garbage fire in a terrorism factory. I mean, Obama has what? 7 or 8 different secret wars going on, and he's established a comprehensive surveillance state to rival any in the Western world. But hey, what a guy. Anyway, if you thought that was bad, and you didn't, but you should have, you haven't seen anything yet. Donald Trump is president-elect. Those poor Americans. They spent 8 years labouring under the yoke of a Kenyan socialist Muslim. Surely it's time for the pendulum to swing back the other way just a teeny bit. So now they've elected a gigantic orange fascist, and there are Nazis in the streets, just like Coburg and Cronulla. Job well done, USA. But what does it mean for us here in Australia? Well, who doesn't love an emboldened, pussy-grabbing racist? And we've got more than our fair share of extremely happy white supremacists in this country too. Now that all bets are off in America, things are heating up in Australia as well, and I don't mean climate change because that's a Bureau of Meteorology hoax. So here are some of the things that are okay now that Donald Trump is president. You can have parties with your friends with everyone wearing sheets over their heads and setting fire to stuff. Here's something that's always been okay in Australia, putting on blackface. Now it's internationally acceptable. Andrew Bolt will be filling out his application to join the Aboriginal industry as we speak. Mammy, Mammy. It's now okay to listen to Ted Nugent. That's enough. We can take George Christensen seriously.
Yes, I've got a petition which has got a number of pages of signatures attached to it. It's done the rounds of the House of Representatives.
Yes, George, I see what you mean. And of course, it's time to smash ISIS. Well, I think that was Oasis, but close enough. Those bastards have been inflicting pain on people for years. Now you can have preposterous hair. Just remember to feed it. Post-Trump, you can be a confident, assertive conservative. Be like Kevin Andrews and just walk around everywhere in a terry-toweling hat and a pair of thongs. It's even okay to deport illegal aliens. And finally, we can enjoy watching old VHS recordings of Joni Loves Chachi. Oh, and hopefully we'll have gun laws soon, like the USA as well. Australia, you're welcome. Next week, we have plans for 18C. Huge plans. It's going to be tremendous. 18C has many, many friends, important friends, and you're going to love what we're going to do with it. It's going to be huge. It's going to be terrific. It's a fantastic.
Yeah, well, it is with a major upwelling of Schadenfreude and a gigantic frisson of I told you so that I sat here and I listened to Donald bloody Trump get himself elected. Because I did. I spent 18 months telling everybody that ISIL and Donald Trump were working together. Every time he made a speech about banning Muslim immigration, ISIL put his speeches on their websites for recruiting material, and they enlisted thousands of people to their cause. Every time they chopped some heads off or threw people off a rooftop, Donald Trump's popularity soared on the American outrage. So they've been acting like a pair of commensal organisms feeding each other. And apparently, ISIL are in fact celebrating that Trump has been elected. Vladimir Putin is celebrating that Trump has been elected. It's curious, that. I was waiting to hear what he would say in his victory speech, and he was really gentle and meek and mild and conciliatory. And then he started talking about more impossible shit that he was going to do. He was going to double America's GDP. So Americans are going to have, they're going to produce twice as much. They're going to get paid to produce twice as much. They're going to magically, he's going to produce jobs out of thin air. He's going to put a trade barrier between America and China. So everything in Walmart just got, well, it's going to get probably 100, 200%, 145% more expensive. I think that was the figure, 145% tariff on cheap Chinese goods. So that instead of going and buying a cheap Chinese generator that starts first time and works and runs for 3,000 hours, he wants people to go back to buying an American generator that's a pain in the ass to get going, it's overweight, breaks down lots and uses a heap of fuel and costs more. Well, yeah, I don't know whether those factories are actually going to get up and go again. I don't know whether anybody wants those products anymore. Personally, I'm right on the point of telling my newsagent not to keep a copy of Air and Space Smithsonian for me because, it might be 35 pages and it's jam-packed full of ads and it's saturated with hyper-patriotism. And they want, like $18.90 or something for it. And compare that to the British Aeroplane Monthly magazine, which is about 90 pages and often has calendars and lift-outs and stuff. It's got ads in it. It's British Empire military slanted, but it's twice as much and it only costs about $10 or $12. Why would you pay twice as much for half the product if you're buying it from America, kind of thing? So yeah, that may have to be sacrificed on the altar of financial rationality. Besides, Donald Trump's going to be their president. I don't want to buy anything American, just as a citizen of planet Earth. Trump reckons that global warming is a hoax invented by the Chinese to cripple American industry. Yeah, well, I understand most of New South Wales went all day yesterday without any electricity. It was Victoria's turn last week. And it was South Australia's turn a couple of weeks before that. The infrastructure that maintains the supply of almost free electricity to the cities, because it is almost free. If everybody had to make their own electricity, they would be mind blown by how much it costs you if you've got to make your own. So they get their electricity nearly for free. All their infrastructure was largely built, say, 50 to 30 years ago on very dated engineering expectations of what a big storm is. So all of those towers that fell over in Victoria were 40 years old. They had a 40-year designed life to failure, and they weren't originally stressed to cope with the wind speeds they were asked to put up with. So the weather is, it's degrading society's capacity to remain industrialised. And it means that nobody can honestly go into a bank manager and say, pretty please, will you lend me the $1 million to plant this crop of whatever it is I want to grow? Because there's a near certainty that the weather will ruin your crop. It'll either get drought afflicted or it'll get hammered by hail, or you won't be able to move it to market because the roads have been flooded. So none of Trump's ambitious plans to get the economy going again because he thinks global warming is a hoax, none of them have the faintest hope of being anything but a joke. Costly experimental joke. He's going to send a lot of people to the brink of very great misery because he's built their hopes up. He's told everybody exactly what they wanted to hear, except NASA. Somebody asked him what was his policy for space research, flight enterprise, and he said that it was all very well to have skyrockets, but they cost a lot of money, and there's a lot of potholes in the roads that need fixing, and he thinks that's going to be a better use of NASA's budget, fixing potholes in the roads. But just his idea of there are going to be so many jobs. I'm going to double the GDP. I'm going to increase military spending while cutting taxes and pulling out of overseas military contracts and treaties and obligations. And one of his things, like 3 times in a 1.5 hour briefing with Republican defense specialists, he asked why you can't use nuclear weapons. You've got them, they cost a lot of money. Why can't you use them? Duh. So he is in favour of pulling Americans out of places like Japan and South Korea and Turkey and giving the Turkeys and the Japanese and the South Koreans nuclear weapons. And that won't be a give. That'll be a you pay us and we'll give you ours. But at the moment, there are American nuclear weapons in all 3 of those places, but it's Americans who are in charge of them. Bear in mind that Hurdy-Gurdy-Gurdigan has locked up 85,000 turkeys because they have a university education and they can read and write and think and count. Because Turkey right now represents the Boko Haram Islamo-fascist faction of NATO. Yeah, so we're still faced with the prospect of Trump, and who the fucking hell is he? I mean, if Trump was telling the truth during all of his campaigning, if he's actually going to try and do everything he said he's going to do, everything he promised he's going to do, everything that the people who voted for him trust him to do, then everything he said since he got the numbers in the Electoral College, everything he said since then is an arse-licking act. He is pretending to be as smooth and pleasant and mild-mannered as he possibly can in order to get through to become inaugurated so he can then implement everything he always said he was ever going to do. That's assuming that he's actually an honest man at some level, even unto his supporters. The other option, and it's looking pretty good, is that everything he's said and done since he married Melania has been a deliberate act intended to bolster his public standing within the post-factual, unthinking classes of America. The people who emote and vote out of emotion. Just, I feel this, I feel that, I don't know anything, I'm sick of bloody experts, I don't want to know what the facts are. I feel thus, and therefore, because I'm going to vote for this man who says he can fix it. And he's got himself elected on de future princip. I am the man who can fix it. That's all he said. I can do this. I have a winning temperament. I can do it. Meanwhile, he's led a really, really, really cunning campaign where he has made himself look like a buffoon who's going to be easy to beat. And while Hillary's been out there playing to her Wall Street backers and their imaginations, he's been out in the swing states talking to the disaffected. I note that Putin's really pleased. I note Putin was a KGB colonel. I note that Melania comes from Slovenia. And I note that she became part of the great diaspora after the Berlin Wall fell down when the Soviet Union imploded. I reckon Trump has been married by a sleeper agent. I reckon the Slovenian Komsomolskaya and NKVD Old Members Association has just captured the White House. What he does with those launch codes when he gets them is going to be a matter of pure conjecture. But yeah, nobody has a clue who Trump is or what he's going to do. But he has been given the power to formulate all American foreign policy for the next 4 years. Hoo-yeah, bang! And I said it was going to happen. I said he was going to get in because I could see that he was appealing to the lowest, most base, selfish, ignorant, arrogant, hubristic, hyper-patriotic kernel of Americanism that makes them send their children in school to stand up and salute the flag and pledge their allegiance to the flag. It's a little mini Nuremberg rally and they all go through it every day for the first 10 years of their educated lives. And Trump pushed, pulled, jumped and prodded every one of their emotional hot buttons. And he is their president-elect. And, like when he has a shit fight with China, it means it'll be China who bombs Pine Gap. and I'll be downwind of the fallout. I haven't breathed fallout since 1963 when Queen Elizabeth got the RAF to do a fizzle yield test at Maralinga. Warbles on a lot to YouTube. Ciao.